The clinking of crystal glasses echoed through the dining room as my older sister Lydia stood up, her perfectly manicured hand raised to command everyone's attention as she always did. "Big news, everyone," she announced, flashing that flawless smile our parents never seemed to get enough of. "I just got a call for an interview with Titan Dynamics." She paused for dramatic effect, basking in the attention. "They reached out to me specifically for the Vice President of Marketing position." My mother's eyes sparkled with pride, and my father's chest swelled as if her success somehow reflected on them. "That's amazing, Lydia," my mother gushed, nearly knocking over her wineglass in her excitement. Titan Dynamics is the largest tech firm in the city. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the subtle suffocation of sitting at this mahogany dining table where I had always been measured against my sister. Lydia leaned back in her chair, tossing her expertly highlighted hair. "They said my track record in branding and my leadership skills made me a perfect fit." She glanced at me, her eyes sharp with unspoken comparison. I stared down at my plate, moving the asparagus around without appetite. I had my own successes, but they never seemed to matter here. "That's a real career path," my mother said, turning to me, her tone suddenly sharper. "Maybe your sister can give you some advice, Emily. Help you find something more stable." There it was, the familiar sting. The reminder that in their eyes, my work as a consultant building my own company from scratch was just a phase. Something less legitimate, less impressive. "I'm doing fine, Mom," I replied quietly, keeping my tone neutral though my pulse had quickened. Lydia let out a small dismissive laugh. "Oh, come on, Emily. You're still doing that freelancing thing, right?" She emphasized the word as if it was something distasteful. "How long are you going to pretend that's a real job?" My father set down his glass, his expression serious. "Lydia has a point, Emily. You're 30 now. It's time to get serious about your future." I gripped my fork a little tighter, fighting the urge to snap back. They had no idea. They had no clue about the contracts on my desk, the acquisition deals I was negotiating, the empire I had built, while they remained willfully blind. "My business is doing well," I started, but Lydia cut me off. "Business." She chuckled, leaning back in her chair. "You work from your apartment. How well can it really be going?" I forced a tight smile, choosing silence over the argument I knew wouldn't change anything. "Actually," Lydia continued, clearly enjoying the spotlight, "my interview is Monday morning. They're even flying in their CEO to meet me personally." I looked up, my pulse steady, my mind racing. I thought about the stack of resumes on my desk, including one from a certain Lydia Thompson, forwarded by HR with a note. Another overconfident candidate with a sense of entitlement. "Your call, boss." "Well, good luck," I said, setting my napkin down and rising from my chair. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." Lydia smirked. "What, did someone finally agree to buy something from you, Emily?" My mother sighed, her face a mask of disappointment. "When are you going to stop this silly independent phase? Your father could have gotten you a real position years ago." I didn't reply. I didn't owe them an explanation. They had no idea that the name on my office door read Emily Thompson, CEO, Titan Dynamics. As I drove back to my penthouse apartment, not that they knew I could afford one, I thought about how I had reached this point, how their constant dismissal had driven me to build something bigger than they could imagine. It had started 10 years ago after I graduated with my MBA. Lydia was the star of the family then, too, climbing the corporate ladder with her effortless charm, while I quietly studied market trends and business strategies. When I told my family I was starting my own consulting firm, they laughed. When I landed my first major client, they dismissed it as luck. When I started buying struggling companies and turning them around, they didn't even notice. 5 years ago, I made my biggest move yet, acquiring Titan Dynamics through a complex series of shell companies and investment firms. The previous CEO was ready to retire, and I had spent years preparing for this moment. I changed my professional name, knowing my family never paid enough attention to business news to make the connection. Now I ran one of the most powerful tech companies in the country, and they still saw me as the unsuccessful younger sister, the one who never quite measured up. But that was about to change. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. As I stepped into the private elevator of Titan Tower, the morning sun casting long shadows against the glass walls. My reflection stared back at me, sharp, polished, unrecognizable from the quiet, overlooked younger sister they had once known. My assistant Jessica Tran met me as the doors slid open to the top floor. She handed me my morning espresso, her eyes sparkling with a hint of mischief. "Good morning, Ms. Thompson. Your 9 a.m. appointment has arrived early," she said, keeping pace as I strode down the marble hallway. "She's been waiting in the lobby for nearly 30 minutes, insisting that the CEO specifically requested her presence." I allowed myself a small smile. "Let her wait a bit longer," I replied, adjusting my jacket. "How is she handling it?" Jessica's lips curved into a knowing smirk. "She's demanded coffee 3 times, name-dropped several executives she claims to know, and told the receptionist that her sister is a nobody who can't even hold a proper job." I chuckled softly. Typical Lydia, so caught up in her own image that she failed to notice the obvious. As I reached my office, I paused to straighten the nameplate on my door, Emily Thompson, CEO, Titan Dynamics. I glanced at the framed magazine covers lining the walls. Headlines like "The Woman Who Saved Titan" and "Tech Stealth Powerhouse," each one a quiet declaration of the empire I had built while my family remained blissfully unaware. Jessica leaned in, lowering her voice. "Should I send her up now?" I checked my watch. 8:55 a.m. "Yes, and make sure the security team is recording the lobby and elevator cameras. I want this moment preserved." Jessica grinned. "Consider it done." I settled into my leather chair, the skyline of the city stretching out behind me, a testament to everything I had achieved. Precisely at 9:00 a.m., my intercom buzzed. "Ms. Thompson, your guest is here," Jessica announced, her tone perfectly professional. "Send her in." The door opened, and Lydia swept in with the confidence of someone who had always been told the world was hers for the taking. She wore a sharp navy pantsuit. Her hair perfectly styled her smile, a practiced blend of warmth and ambition. Then she saw me behind the CEO's desk, and her confident stride faltered. Her eyes widened, the colour draining from her face as the reality of the situation hit her. "Emily," she stammered, her perfectly manicured hands gripping her portfolio a bit too tightly. What are you doing here?" I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands calmly. "Good morning, Lydia. Please have a seat." She hesitated, her gaze flicking to the nameplate on my desk, the sleek monitors, the framed awards on the walls. She sank into the leather chair opposite me, her expression a mix of disbelief and confusion. But I was supposed to meet with the CEO," she said, her voice a half-pitched whisper. "I was told the CEO wanted to interview me, personally." I smiled, letting the silence stretch just long enough for her discomfort to grow. "That would be me," I replied evenly. "Emily Thompson, CEO of Titan Dynamics." She blinked rapidly, her carefully constructed composure cracking. This can't be. You're just a consultant. You work from your apartment. You barely make enough to cover rent." I felt a cool, satisfying calm settle over me as I leaned forward. "Is that what you think, Lydia? That I'm still the struggling little sister you left behind?" Her face flushed red, her fingers digging into the arms of her chair. But you never said, you never told us." I leaned back again, steepling my fingers. "Why would I? You never asked. You were always too busy reminding me of my shortcomings, too busy bragging about your own achievements." Lydia opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water, her carefully crafted self-image shattering in real time. I picked up the copy of her resume Jessica had prepared for me. "I see here you claim to have increased your previous department's revenue by 300% last year. Impressive." She forced a shaky smile, grasping for control. Yes, that's true. I led a major rebranding initiative." I slid another folder across the desk. Actually, I have the annual reports from your former company. It seems the entire marketing department only saw a 20% increase, and most of that was credited to a campaign led by your junior team, the one you initially rejected but later took credit for. Lydia's face went from pale to crimson, her hands trembling slightly. You had someone investigate me. I leaned in my tone, dropping to a near whisper. I investigate all potential senior executives thoroughly. We have very high standards at Titan. She stared at me, her eyes brimming with a mixture of shock, anger, and something that looked a lot like fear. My intercom buzzed again. Ms. Thompson, your parents are in the lobby. They're demanding to see you. They say it's urgent. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Of course she had texted them the moment she realized who I really was. Send them up, I said, my voice steady. It's time for a family meeting. As Jessica confirmed the request, I turned back to Lydia. Sit tight, I said, my voice calm but cold. This is going to be a very educational morning for all of you. The office door swung open and my parents, Richard and Martha Thompson, swept in their faces a mix of confusion and outrage. My father's jaw was set, his broad shoulders stiff with indignation, while my mother's carefully styled hair trembled slightly, as if even her perfect exterior couldn't quite mask her unease. Emily, what is the meaning of this? My father demanded, his voice echoing off the polished glass walls of my corner office. I remained seated, leaning back in my leather chair, the city skyline stretching out behind me, a silent reminder of the empire I had built without their knowledge or support. Please take a seat, I said, gesturing to the chairs opposite my desk. They hesitated, exchanging a quick, confused glance before reluctantly sitting down, their postures rigid. Lydia, still pale and visibly shaken, sat to the side, her hands twisting in her lap as she avoided my gaze. My mother leaned forward, her carefully painted nails digging into the armrests. Why are you sitting behind the CEO's desk? She asked, her tone a mixture of disbelief and accusation. I folded my hands on the desk, my gaze steady. Because, Mother, this is my desk. I am the CEO of Titan Dynamics. For a moment, there was a stunned silence. My father's face went slack, his eyes darting to the nameplate on my desk and the framed covers of business magazines lining the walls, each one bearing my name. Impossible, he sputtered, leaning forward. You're just a consultant. You work from home. You barely make enough to cover your rent. This has to be some kind of mistake. I felt a sharp, almost exhilarating sense of vindication as I straightened in my chair. Actually, Titan Dynamics has been my company for the past 5 years. I acquired it through a series of shell companies and investment firms, rebuilt it from the ground up, and turned it into one of the largest tech companies in the city. My mother's perfectly arched eyebrows shot up, her carefully composed expression cracking. But why didn't you tell us? I leaned back, my eyes never leaving theirs. Because you never cared to ask. You were too busy celebrating Lydia's every minor promotion, too busy dismissing my work as a phase to notice what I was building. Lydia's face flushed a deep, mortified red, her eyes flicking nervously between our parents and me. My father's hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white. You mean to tell me that all this time, while we thought you were struggling, you were actually running this company? I leaned forward, my tone cool and precise. Not just running it, owning it. I have built this company into the powerhouse it is today, and I did it without a single ounce of support from any of you. My mother's mouth opened and closed, her carefully rehearsed control slipping. But we would have helped you if we had known. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat, but forced it back, keeping my expression steady. Helped me, like the time you told me I was wasting my MBA, like the time you dismissed my first major client as a fluke, like the countless dinners where you praised Lydia for her so-called real career while ignoring everything I had accomplished. My father's face darkened, a vein in his temple pulsing visibly. We didn't know, Emily. How could we have known if you never told us? I felt a wave of cold resolve wash over me. You never asked. You were too busy building Lydia up, too busy treating me like the family disappointment. My mother's hand flew to her chest, her eyes wide with shock. That's not true. We've always supported you. I met her gaze, my eyes hard. No, Mother. You supported the idea of me as the younger struggling sister, the one who needed guidance, the one who couldn't quite get her life together. But the moment I decided to strike out on my own to build something for myself, you turned your backs on me. Lydia, still trembling, finally found her voice. Emily, this doesn't change anything. You're still my sister. We're still family. I leaned back, folding my arms. Family? You mean like the time you took credit for my college business project because you said it would help your resume, or the time you told your friends I was just playing at being an entrepreneur while you were climbing the corporate ladder? She flinched as if I had slapped her, her carefully maintained facade crumbling. I glanced at the clock. It was time to end this charade. Jessica, I said, pressing the intercom button on my desk, please bring in Mr. Park. A moment later, the door opened and James Park Titan's chief legal officer walked in, his expression calm but serious. Mr. Park, I said, my tone sharp, please explain to my family the consequences of falsifying credentials on an executive-level job application at Titan Dynamics. James adjusted his glasses, his gaze cold as he looked at Lydia. Submitting fraudulent information on an executive application is grounds for immediate disqualification and potential legal action, especially if it involves intellectual property theft or defamation. Lydia's face went from red to ashen, her hands clenching into fists. You can't, you're my sister. I met her desperate gaze without a flicker of sympathy. Family or not, I have a responsibility to this company and its thousands of employees. I won't compromise my integrity or my business for anyone, not even you. My father's voice shook with barely contained fury. This is a betrayal, Emily. We're family. I stood slowly, letting the full weight of my authority fill the room. No, Father. The betrayal happened long ago when you chose to see me as a failure instead of a force to be reckoned with. Now you're just facing the consequences. The silence that followed was as cold and sharp as the glass walls around us. As James left the room, his leather shoes clicking against the polished marble, the silence that filled my office was suffocating. My father's face was a mixture of rage and disbelief, his jaw clenched so tightly that the muscles in his neck stood out like ropes. My mother for once seemed genuinely lost for words, her carefully controlled facade crumbling as she glanced nervously at the door through which James had just exited. Lydia's eyes darted around the room, her chest rising and falling in shallow, panicked breaths. She looked like a trapped animal, cornered and desperate, her polished exterior shattered beyond repair. Emily, my mother finally managed, her voice trembling. We're your family. You can't seriously consider taking legal action against your own sister. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands calmly. This isn't personal, Mother. It's business. And in business we deal with facts, not family politics. My father's fist came down hard on the armrest of his chair, the sound echoing through the glass-walled office. You're going too far, Emily. This is betrayal. You're tearing this family apart. I met his furious glare without flinching. No, Dad. This family fell apart long before today. It broke every time you chose to dismiss my achievements. Every time you treated Lydia's minor successes as monumental while ignoring the years of work I poured into building this company. You were too focused on celebrating her to notice me even when I became the very thing you claimed to value. A powerful, successful leader. Lydia's face had gone from white to a blotchy, desperate red, her carefully crafted image crumbling like cheap plaster. Emily, you can't do this. You're my sister. I felt a wave of cold anger rise in my chest. Did you remember that when you undermined me at every family dinner? when you told everyone I was wasting my life on consulting while you boasted about your corporate job? Did you remember we were sisters when you took credit for my ideas in college, or when you belittled my achievements to make yourself look better? She opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. No, I continued, my voice icy. You only remembered we were sisters when you thought it could benefit you. When you needed me to overlook your lies, to excuse your arrogance, to prop up the perfect image you've spent years crafting. My mother reached across the desk, her fingers trembling as she placed her hand over mine. Emily, please. This isn't who you are. You're not a cold, calculating person. You're better than this. I pulled my hand away, the sting of her words slicing deeper than I wanted to admit. You have no idea who I am, Mother. You never bothered to find out. You were too busy telling me what I should be, what I should want, how I should live my life. My father's face twisted into a mask of anger and disbelief. You can't just cut us out like this. We're your family. I felt the familiar bitter taste of years of resentment rise in my throat, but I forced it down, keeping my tone steady. Family is supposed to be about support, about respect. It's supposed to be the people who believe in you, who stand by you, not the ones who dismiss your every effort as a phase. Lydia's head snapped up, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and fear. Emily, please, don't do this. I'm your sister. We can work this out. I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto hers, my voice dropping to a near whisper. I have spent my entire life being the afterthought, the one you all overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. But not anymore. I have built this company from the ground up, turned it into a powerhouse while you were busy polishing your resume. You wanted to play corporate power games. Lydia, well, welcome to the big leagues. The colour drained from her face, her confidence shattered. For the first time I saw real fear in her eyes, the kind that comes from realizing that the world you thought you controlled is slipping through your fingers. My father's fists tightened on the armrests, his face turning an alarming shade of red. Emily, this isn't just a business decision. This is personal. You're turning your back on your own flesh and blood. I rose slowly from my chair, letting the full weight of my authority fill the room. No, Dad, I'm not turning my back. I'm finally standing up for myself, for the person you all chose to ignore, for the woman who built this empire while you looked the other way. My mother's eyes filled with tears, her carefully painted lips trembling. Emily, please. We can fix this. We can be a family again. I felt a strange hollow ache in my chest, but I forced myself to ignore it, to focus on the facts, on the reality of the situation. Family is more than just blood, Mother. It's about respect, trust, and support, things you never gave me. I reached for the phone on my desk, my fingers steady, as I pressed the intercom button. Jessica, please arrange for our guests to be escorted out. I have a board meeting in 10 minutes. Jessica's calm, professional voice crackled through the speaker. Of course, Ms. Thompson. I met my parents' stunned, betrayed gazes one last time as the door opened behind them. This meeting is over, I said, my voice cold and final. You can either accept the reality of who I have become or continue living in denial. Either way, I am done trying to prove my worth to you. Lydia stumbled to her feet, her face twisted in a mixture of rage and despair. You'll regret this, Emily. You'll end up alone. I watched as they turned and walked out, the heavy glass door closing behind them with a soft final click. For a long moment I stood there in the silence, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind racing with 1,000 conflicting emotions. Finally I exhaled, letting the tension drain from my body as I turned to face the window, the city skyline stretching out beneath me. The empire I had built, the legacy I had carved out for myself, the life I had fought for against all odds. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly free. The door clicked shut, leaving my office in a profound, echoing silence. For a moment, I just stood there, my reflection in the glass walls, blending with the sprawling cityscape outside, a silent witness to the storm that had just passed. I felt the adrenaline still thrumming in my veins, the echoes of my family's accusations ringing in my ears. I exhaled slowly, sinking back into my chair, the leather creaking softly beneath me. I leaned my head back, closing my eyes for a brief moment, letting the weight of the confrontation settle over me. Jessica knocked lightly before stepping back into the room, her expression unreadable as she set a cup of steaming tea on my desk. "I thought you might need this," she said softly, her tone unusually gentle. I opened my eyes, managing a small, grateful smile. "Thank you, Jessica." She hesitated for a moment, her sharp, observant eyes flicking to the closed door through which my family had just exited. "Are you okay?" I looked down at the tea, the thin spiral of steam rising slowly, the rich, comforting scent filling the air. "I will be," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "I think this needed to happen." Jessica nodded, her face softening slightly. "You did the right thing. They needed to see the real you to understand what you've built." I felt a tightness in my chest, a mixture of relief and lingering hurt, but I forced myself to push it down to stay focused. "Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate your support." She gave me a small, encouraging smile before slipping back out the door, clicking shut behind her. I took a deep breath, picking up the tea and cradling it between my hands, the warmth seeping into my skin, grounding me. I glanced around my office, the walls lined with framed magazine covers, awards and photos from years of relentless work and silent victories. I reached for the small frame on the corner of my desk, the one picture I kept hidden from view. It was a photo of my grandfather, the one person who had always believed in me, who had seen my potential long before I had proven anything to the world. "Thank you, Grandpa," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the quiet office. "I hope I've made you proud." My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. A message from an old friend, someone who had been with me during those early days of long nights and uncertain futures. "Just saw the news about the Titan expansion. You did it, Em. You really did it." I felt a small, genuine smile stretch across my lips for the first time in what felt like years. I set the frame back down and took a long sip of the tea, letting the warmth spread through me, a quiet reminder that I had chosen this path for a reason. I leaned back, my fingers moving almost unconsciously to the keyboard in front of me. I pulled up the live feed from the lobby cameras, watching as my parents and Lydia stumbled out of the building, their faces pale and drawn, their carefully constructed images shattered. Lydia paused at the revolving door, turning to look back at the towering building that now bore my name. I saw the flash of resentment, the deep consuming anger in her eyes as she pushed through the glass doors and disappeared onto the busy street. I closed the feed, my heart feeling oddly light, the oppressive weight of years of silence and restraint finally lifting. I turned back to my desk, opening the financial reports I had been reviewing before their unexpected arrival. The numbers were good. No, they were better than good. Titan was thriving, its reach expanding into new markets, its influence growing stronger with every quarter. I glanced at my calendar, the back-to-back meetings, the investor calls, the strategic planning sessions. Each one a step further into the future I had carved out for myself, the life I had built from the ground up without their validation or approval. As I leaned forward, fingers hovering over the keyboard, I felt a sense of clarity, a profound, unshakable conviction settle over me. I had won, not just in the business world, but in the silent, unspoken war that had raged within my family for years. They had tried to define me, to limit me, to dismiss me, but I had proven them wrong. I had become the person they never believed I could be, and I had done it without their help, without their support, without their permission. I hit send on a long overdue email to my board confirming the next phase of Titan's expansion. my mind already moving past the morning's drama, my focus shifting back to the future, to the endless possibilities that lay ahead. I took another deep breath, letting the air fill my lungs, cleansing and invigorating. For the first time in years, I felt free, truly, completely free. As I set my cup down, the rich, comforting aroma of the tea still lingering in the air, I leaned back once more, my eyes drifting to the city skyline, the gleaming sunlit towers stretching toward the horizon. I had won, and this time I wasn't just proving it to them, I was proving it to myself. Story 2. Let me back up a little. I'm Maya Carlson. I'm 33. I live just outside Boston in a quiet neighborhood where I've finally found some peace. I'm in remission after a brutal 2-year fight with cancer that nearly killed me. These days I spend more time gardening, less time explaining myself to people who never really saw me. My sister Rachel, she's 29. She's always been a center of the room person. You know, the type high heels at Thanksgiving, a Bluetooth headset in at Christmas. We were never especially close, but I never imagined she'd go this far. Anyway, this all starts at a family dinner. That night felt like a fresh start. It was the first big get-together since I got better. I wore a navy dress and brought a bottle of wine. Rachel was already seated chatting away with her fiancé Josh and their future in-laws. Our parents Helen and Martin were buzzing around the kitchen doing their usual thing. It was warm, upbeat. For once I didn't feel like a fragile ghost in the corner. I even made a joke. Something like, I'm so excited for the wedding next week I already picked out a dress. That's when Rachel laughed. I don't mean a small chuckle, I mean a full-on smug laugh. She leaned back and said, "Wait, you think the wedding's next week?" The room fell weirdly quiet. My future brother-in-law's mum, Kathy, looked confused. Then she pulled out her phone. "Oh, sweetie," she said, "it already happened. Look." She turned her screen toward me. There it was. Photos from a wedding, their wedding. Rachel in white smiling under a floral arch, Josh beaming next to her, my parents, all his family, everyone grinning in group shots. There were hugs, champagne, dancing, cake. And me? I wasn't in a single frame. Because I wasn't there, because I wasn't invited. I looked at Rachel, stunned. What is this? "Oh," she said, casually sipping her wine. "I guess I gave you the old date. Oops." She actually said oops. I stood up slowly. My hands were shaking. "You changed the date and didn't tell me." "I wanted something small," she said. "Simple. I didn't want everyone focused on you being, sick. This was my day." That hit harder than the chemo ever did. I don't remember what anyone else said after that. I just remember walking out. Past the table, past the awkward silence, past Josh's parents looking like they wanted to crawl under the floorboards. I got in my car, shut the door, and just sat there. I stared at the dashboard, completely numb, but not for long. When I got home, I opened my laptop. I'd been saving $100,000 for a surprise wedding gift. It was going to be the down payment on a house for Rachel and Josh. I had already worked out the paperwork. I had a wire transfer scheduled for the following week. I cancelled it. Then I called my real estate contact. "Hi, Jen," I said calmly. "Please withdraw the property reservation for Josh and Rachel Carlson." "Yes, effective immediately. And let's circulate to the other agents in the network. If their names come up, mark listings as unavailable for 3 months. Just standard processing delay." She didn't ask questions. She didn't have to. The next morning I sat at my desk and emailed Josh. Subject about last night. "Josh, I know you weren't behind the wedding decision, and I don't hold this against you personally, but I won't be helping with the house. I wish you both well. I just need distance right now." He called within an hour. "Jesus, Maya," he said. "I didn't know, I swear. I thought the invitations were handled." I could hear the panic in his voice. "I believe you," I said, "but you still married someone who thought I didn't belong at her wedding." He was quiet for a while. "I'm so sorry, I really am." "I appreciate the call," I said, "but this is bigger than forgetting to CC someone on an email." He asked if we were still seeing the Brookline house that weekend. "We're not," I said. "That property's no longer available." A few days later, Rachel called. "Why are we locked out of every house we've been looking at?" Everything we had scheduled is suddenly listed as under contract. Even the Brookline one you showed Josh. I kept my voice level. I'm no longer involved. You're punishing me, she snapped. No, I replied. I'm just reallocating my energy toward people who don't treat me like an afterthought. You're unbelievable, she said. I said nothing, because I wasn't angry. I was done. 1 week later, our parents asked for a sit-down at their house. I agreed. Josh's parents were there too. It didn't take long before it all came out. The wedding lie, the cancelled gift, the real estate freeze. Josh looked stunned. Kathy looked heartbroken. My parents, they just looked tired. I had no idea, Kathy said. Maya, we were told you didn't feel up to attending. She excluded me, I said flatly. Not because I was sick. Because she didn't want the attention off herself. Rachel jumped in. That's not what I meant. Dad raised a hand. You didn't even try to include her. Mom said softly, Maya had $100,000 set aside for you. Rachel's face went pale. Yeah, I said, pulling out my phone. I showed the cancellation screen. The title read, Carlson's wedding gift. Cancelled. Rachel's voice cracked. You were really going to do that for us? I nodded. Because you're my sister, or at least I thought you were. Josh stared at her. You told me she didn't want to come, that she declined. I didn't think she'd care, Rachel whispered. You could feel the air drain out of the room. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just stood up. I think we're done here. As I reached the front door, I heard Rachel's voice. Maya, wait. Don't go. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't look back. It's not about the money, I said. It's about what matters. And now I know what I matter to you. I walked out into the quiet evening air and closed the door behind me. No rage, no drama, just clarity. It had been 2 weeks since the dinner. I didn't speak to Rachel. I didn't check in with my parents. I didn't reach out to Josh. I just let the silence settle in. I think sometimes silence does more than shouting ever could. It has weight. It grows between people when something's broken, and it makes them feel it every time they open their mouths and hear nothing back. Meanwhile, life went on. I was back to work part-time consulting from home. I went to my appointments, I planted lavender in the yard, and I donated blood for the first time in a long time. Healing isn't just about the body. Sometimes it's about reclaiming how your day feels, who you let take space in your peace. One morning, as I was organising donation paperwork for a local cancer support group, my phone rang. Caller ID Josh. I let it go to voicemail. But a few minutes later, a text came through. Josh, hey, we got denied on our mortgage. The bank said our financials were off. Can we talk? A few hours later, another message. Josh, I don't know what you said to the agents, but we're being ghosted. Can you help? I stared at the screen for a minute, then put the phone face down on my desk. Not out of anger. I just didn't feel responsible anymore. I'd tried, I really had. Later that week, my mum showed up at my front door without warning. She stood on my porch holding a Tupperware container like that would fix things. Maya, she said, I just wanted to talk. I opened the door and let her in. We sat at my kitchen table while she stirred her tea and looked everywhere but at me. She's miserable, you know, she said finally. Rachel. I didn't reply. She realizes she went too far. She just doesn't know how to undo it. I folded my hands in my lap. It's not about undoing anything. You can't undo erasing someone from your wedding. That's not a typo, that's a choice. Mom looked down. She thought you'd draw attention. I survived cancer, I said flatly. That's not a crime, that's just my life. We sat in silence for a bit before she asked, what are you going to do with the money now? I'm donating it, I said, to a cancer foundation. They'll know how to use it. Mom blinked. You're really giving it away. It was never really about the money, Mom. The following Saturday, I got an email from Josh's mom, Kathy. It was short. It said, subject, I'm so sorry. Maya, I had no idea what had happened. I want you to know that your absence was noticed, and it didn't feel right without you there. I don't understand Rachel's choice, but I understand why you're keeping your distance. Please know our family still thinks the world of you. Kathy. I didn't reply right away, but I appreciated it. I really did. The week after that, Rachel called. I didn't pick up. She called again, then again. Finally, she texted, Rachel, what's going on with the listings? Everyone's blocking us. Even our backup places disappeared. I replied simply, I'm not involved anymore. That's all you need to know. She texted back immediately, Rachel, So you are getting revenge? Me, no. I just stopped helping. That's different. Rachel, you're being petty. Me, I gave you a wedding gift. It was invisibility. I figured I'd give it back. She didn't reply after that. A week later, my dad called and said we were having a family meeting. I almost said no, but something in his voice told me to show up. So I did. It was awkward from the start. My parents' living room was quiet, heavy with tension. Josh and Rachel were there. Kathy and her husband David too. Rachel looked worn down. She hadn't touched her makeup. Her eyes were puffy. Dad spoke first. Rachel, he said, voice low but steady. What you did to your sister was wrong. Whether you meant to hurt her or not, you did. You made her feel like an outsider in her own family. Josh added, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I thought Maya just didn't come. I didn't know you lied to me too. Rachel flinched. Then Josh said something that clearly cracked something open. I don't know if I can trust you after this. Her mouth opened, but no words came. I sat quietly, watching. Dad turned to me. Maya, do you want to say anything? I looked at Rachel. She looked back. I pulled out my phone. I was going to surprise you, I said. I'd set aside $100,000 for your down payment. I had the house lined up, the paperwork ready. I cancelled all of it the night you showed me your wedding photos. I showed them the cancelled transaction screen, her name, the amount. Rachel's face crumpled. I didn't know, she whispered. That's the thing, I said. You didn't ask, you didn't check. You just decided I wasn't worth including. Josh's mom had tears in her eyes. My God, she muttered. Rachel, why? Rachel shook her head, voice cracking. I just wanted a perfect day. I thought if Maya came, people would focus on her being sick, that they'd all be thinking about cancer instead of us. You thought I was going to steal your spotlight, I said, but I just wanted to be your sister. The silence that followed was unbearable. Not because it was cold, but because it was honest. Rachel looked down at her hands. I didn't mean for it to spiral. I thought I was protecting my day. I sighed. You protected it from the one person who was ready to celebrate it the most. Josh stood and walked to the window. He looked wrecked. Dad's voice was tired. You've both got a lot to figure out. But this isn't just between you and Maya anymore. It affects all of us. Kathy added gently but firmly, we supported this marriage because we believed in the kind of family it would build. I don't know if that's still true. Rachel stared at the floor. What do I do now? I stood up. You live with it, like I lived through all those months alone in the hospital, wondering who would show up, wondering who cared. She flinched again. I walked to the door. Josh tried to speak, but I stopped him with a look. Don't explain it for her, I said. Let her sit in the silence she gave me. Then I walked out, calm, steady. No tears this time. Just whined on my face and the feeling of a chapter ending. Spring turned to early summer, and with it came a softness in the air I hadn't felt in a long time. The kind of softness that doesn't erase what's happened, but lets you breathe around it. Life slowed down in the best way. My hair had grown past my shoulders again, soft waves framing my face like they used to before everything fell apart. I had picked up journaling, long walks in the park, quiet dinners with people who didn't need explanations to be kind. And I didn't think about Rachel, not much anyway. Until one afternoon I got a text from Helen, my real estate network contact. Helen, she's asking around again. That's the third inquiry this month. I replied simply. Handle it like we agreed. Because the truth was I hadn't just pulled away, I had drawn a line in the dirt, and I wasn't ready to erase it. A few weeks later I was sitting on a shaded bench at Boston Commons, a tall iced tea in one hand and a copy of my own book in the other. The publisher called it a memoir. I just called it the truth. Living twice what illness taught me about letting go. I never planned to write it. But when I started, the words poured out, not in anger, just in clarity. Sometimes being erased makes you see the whole story clearer. That day, I was meeting a journalist. He found my book in a hospital waiting room and said it stayed with him. His name was Daniel. He showed up 5 minutes early, polite and wide-eyed. You really wrote this, he said, holding up the book. It's raw, but not bitter. That was the goal, I said, smiling, honest without being cruel. We talked for nearly an hour, about healing, about how recovery isn't a finish line, it's a new trail. And just as we were wrapping up, my phone buzzed. Rachel. I let it go. Daniel must have seen something shift in my expression. Everything okay? He asked. I nodded, just life reminding me what I walked away from. That night I checked the message. Rachel, I know I can't take it back, but please let me talk to you, even if it's just to say sorry. I stared at the screen for a long time, not angry, not vengeful, just tired. I typed, I've moved on. You should too. That money was mine to give, and I gave it to something that helped me stay alive. But if this is really about saying sorry, I'll meet you for coffee. Next Tuesday, 11 a.m. Newbury Street, same place we used to go when we were kids. Then I hit send, not because I was ready to forgive, but because some things deserve a proper ending. Tuesday came with a cloudless sky. I showed up early. Old habit. I'd rather wait than make someone else wait for me. Rachel came 5 minutes late, looking thinner, quieter, a lot less polished. She sat down without saying anything at first, just stared at her hands. I lost a lot, she said, more than I expected. I nodded. Choices have weight. I lost Josh. I know. He said he couldn't see a future with someone who could do what I did. He said, family matters more than a wedding hashtag. She gave a weak laugh. I guess I thought I was being bold. Turns out I was just being selfish. Silence stretched between us, but it didn't feel harsh. It just sat there, like something old that needed witnessing. I read your book, she said finally. Oh, I didn't think you'd be that honest about me. You weren't named. Didn't have to be. Anyone who knows us could tell. I shrugged. It wasn't about you. Not really. It was about learning how to stop shrinking myself. She looked like she might cry, but didn't. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. I can't repay what I cost you. Not just money, everything. But I started volunteering at a support centre. And I'm learning. I'm trying. She slid the envelope across the table. A donation receipt. Cancer Foundation, $1,000, Rachel Carlson. A start. You didn't have to show me this, I said. I know, she whispered, but I wanted to. We sat in silence a while longer, sipping our coffees. No grand reconciliation, no movie ending. Just two women with shared history and separate lives. When we stood, she looked at me and asked, do you think we'll ever be close again? I looked up at the clear sky. I think some rivers don't close after the bridge collapses. But sometimes on quiet days, you can still meet halfway. She nodded slowly, eyes glossy. I'm sorry, she said again. I know. I went home and added her receipt to the growing folder of quiet gestures people had sent me since the book launched. Letters from strangers, notes from patients, even messages from nurses who remembered me from chemo. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. Months passed. The seasons changed, I travelled a little, spoke at 2 events, got a dog. Rachel and I didn't talk often, just a text every few weeks. Nothing deep, but not nothing. Josh remarried. My parents finally stopped trying to force us together. I think they realised peace sometimes means letting go of the picture-perfect holiday card. One fall afternoon, I walked past the old wedding venue they'd booked, the one I'd secretly helped scout. It was being renovated. New life, new paint. Just like us. I'll leave you with this. Forgiveness isn't always a grand announcement. Sometimes it's a cup of coffee on a Tuesday. Sometimes it's deleting a saved draft. Sometimes it's just not replying to someone's cruelty with your own. I lost a sister that spring, but I found something else myself. And that has been enough. Story 3. I should have known something was off the second I woke up that morning. It was one of those heavy, humid Saturdays in Boston where the sky looks like it's thinking about crying but doesn't commit. I was triple-checking my packing list passport charges, travel-size sunscreen, when I opened the airline app to confirm my seat for the flight. Reservation not found. I blinked, tried again, still gone. A sinking feeling started building in my gut. I'd booked the ticket weeks ago. I had the email. Everything was confirmed. I tried calling my sister Rachel. No answer. A minute later, a text came through. You should be taking care of the kids anyway. Attached was a photo of her 5-year-old twins, Camilla and Chloe, sitting alone on a bench in front of the airport Starbucks, looking scared and confused. That was the moment I realised something wasn't just off. Something was wrong. I'll rewind a bit. My name's Julia. I'm 35, single, and a project lead at a strategy firm in Cambridge. No husband, no kids, just me, my dog, and a decent vinyl collection. My sister Rachel and I aren't what you'd call close. She married into money, big tech money. Huge house in Chestnut Hill Range Rover, in the driveway nanny on speed dial. Picture perfect family, at least online. We hadn't been tight in years, but we still kept up the appearance of being a normal family for the sake of our mom and the occasional holiday brunch. A few weeks back, Rachel had this whole idea about a family vacation to Hawaii. She called it a bonding trip. I figured why not? I had airline miles to burn and her kids had been begging me to come. Plus, my mum practically begged me to say yes. So I did. We were flying out together. That was the plan. I guess Rachel had other ideas. I got to Logan Airport around 8:30 a.m. and raced toward the terminal. I barely even noticed the family of 4 in Mickey Mouse gear chatting excitedly about their resort stay. When I got to the check-in counter, I gave my name. The agent glanced at her screen, then looked at me with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it looks like your reservation was cancelled late last night." I froze. That's not possible. I got the confirmation yesterday. I understand, but the rest of your party already checked in. I stood there trying to process the rest of my... And that's when Rachel's text came in, plus the photo, the girls, alone. Camilla clutching her stuffed unicorn, Chloe visibly crying. I forgot about the flight. I just ran. I found them near a terminal cafe, sitting exactly where the photo showed. Their little backpacks were on the floor. Camilla's shoelace was untied. Chloe's cheeks were still wet. Aunt Julia, they cried in unison. I dropped to my knees and hugged them tight. They clung to me like life rafts. "Where's your mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Chloe looked up at me. She said she'd be right back, but she got on the shuttle bus with Daddy. That was all I needed to hear. Airport security got involved pretty fast. A Massport officer escorted us to the airport security office, while a student volunteer handed the girls warm cocoa. Meanwhile, texts from Rachel kept hitting my phone one after the other. "This is temporary. Don't be dramatic. You'll be a better guardian than I ever was." I didn't respond. Not yet. I was too busy trying not to break down in front of 2 terrified kids. I called our mum, Carol. She'd been in a church group meeting and hadn't heard a thing. She rushed over in a panic. "I can't believe this," she said, breathless, mascara smudged. Rachel would never... She already did. That night, the 3 of us sat in my small townhouse, surrounded by takeout containers and plush toys I had bought on the fly. Camilla and Chloe were curled up on the couch, watching a cartoon with vacant eyes. My mum sat at the dining table, shell-shocked. "Julia," she whispered, "Rachel left them, with no warning, no goodbye, just gone." I nodded. She and Aaron boarded the flight. They're checked into a resort in Waikiki. Their credit card charges already show it. Camilla turned toward me. "Aunt Julia, are Mommy and Daddy coming back?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to lie, but the truth sat on my chest like a stone. "I don't know, sweetheart," I finally said, "but I'm here, you're safe." The next morning I dropped the girls off at their elementary school and drove straight to Rachel's house with a detective and a search warrant in hand. The place looked just like her Instagram spotless curated fake. What we found behind the designer facade was chaos credit card statements, unpaid bills, mysterious offshore accounts, and a $5.29 college fund for the twins that had been drained to $1. That fund had over $500,000 in it, until it didn't. Rachel and her husband had been living beyond their means for years. The house was leveraged, the cars leased, the business, Aaron's tech startup hemorrhaging cash. She had been holding up a castle made of air and Instagram filters. One drawer even had a stash of brand new handbags with the tags still on. But it wasn't just money. In the Home Office, officers found forged bank statements under our mum's name. Patricia had been skimming money from her church group too, writing checks using Carol's signature. It wasn't just fraud, it was calculated long-term theft. And she left her kids behind like luggage at a gate. The kicker, Rachel and Aaron had booked one-way flights to the Caribbean for 2 weeks after Hawaii. They weren't planning to come back. That night I sat at my laptop with every document we'd uncovered spread across the dining table. I uploaded it all bank statements, texts, Rachel's phony vacation posts, and submitted them to the police, the FBI, CPS, and a top child welfare attorney I'd found in DC. I wasn't going to let this slide. I wasn't their plan. But I was going to be their reckoning. The morning after I filed the reports, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My body was on autopilot, make breakfast check on the girls pack their backpacks. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. My sister had left her kids behind like a pair of lost suitcases. I still couldn't make sense of it. But I didn't have time to sit and feel sorry for anyone. There was too much to do. First came the detective's call. "We've gone through the documents you submitted. We're escalating this," he said. "There's evidence of premeditated abandonment, financial fraud, possibly even interstate conspiracy. We're involving the feds." It didn't feel real, but it was. A week later, Rachel and Aaron were arrested in Honolulu. An FBI agent called me to confirm it. They were pulled from their hotel room at 6 a.m. No warning, no last mimosa by the pool. Rachel had tried to act calm, according to the report. Claimed it was a misunderstanding. She had a lawyer on speed dial, but inside her Louis Vuitton travel bag were tickets to the Cayman Islands, forged documents, and a burner phone. The masks were off. Meanwhile, back home, I was adjusting to a new reality. Every day started with a school drop-off and ended with bedtime stories. I had to rearrange my work schedule, take calls during snack breaks, and relearn how to braid pigtails. The girls had nightmares every other night. Sometimes they'd crawl into my bed, whispering in their sleep about their mom not coming back. I stopped correcting them. I just held them close and let the silence speak. Then came the hard part, the hearings. The first one was surreal. I sat in a Boston courtroom across from my sister, who was now wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of her usual designer threads. Her hair was flat, her eyes sunken. Her skin looked pale and stripped of the makeup filters she used to live behind. I admit to everything she said, just like that. She went on to explain it all, the fake life, the money siphoned from the twins' education fund, the church donation scams, using our mum's name, and the secret exit plan. She confessed it was about pride, envy, keeping up the lifestyle, but mostly she said it was about hating me. Her words: "I hated Julia's life, the stability, the freedom. I wanted it, but I couldn't stop pretending, so I lied. I took. And when it all started to fall apart, I ran." She cried. The courtroom went quiet. I didn't. I just sat there staring at the woman who used to braid my hair when we were kids. The woman who used to write me birthday cards in cursive and call me Jules. I didn't recognize her anymore. Aaron admitted his role too. He'd been hiding the company's collapse for over 2 years. Rachel never asked questions. As long as the money kept flowing, she didn't want to know. But eventually, the money stopped. The lies didn't. They both pled guilty. The charges: federal child abandonment, misuse of education funds, embezzlement, document forgery, money laundering, conspiracy. Rachel was looking at 20 years, Aaron maybe 10 if he cooperated. Back at home, things were quieter. Not easier, but steadier. The girls had started seeing a counsellor at Boston Children's, Dr. Molly Watson. She had soft eyes and spoke to the girls like they mattered, which for kids who were tossed aside meant everything. Camilla was drawing more. Chloe had started smiling again. Some nights they even slept through without waking up screaming. We were healing slowly, not fixing, just mending. My mum took it hard. She stopped going to church for a while, said the shame was too much. She'd been on the board of the women's ministry, and now she was the woman whose daughter stole the funds. But eventually she came back, quietly. She started baking with the girls, teaching them how to make sugar cookies from scratch. She helped with homework. She showed up. She was doing what Rachel hadn't. The adoption process started a month after the arrest. It was strange filling out legal documents to become the girl's guardian when I never planned to be a parent. But I didn't hesitate. They were my family now, not by blood, by choice. And in some ways that choice mattered more. At work, my team rallied around me. My boss helped me move to a flex schedule. I started working remote a few days a week. It wasn't easy juggling client calls and kindergarten science projects, but I was figuring it out. Even the girls' school stepped up. The guidance counsellor offered regular check-ins. The PTA mums brought casseroles. A neighbour named Danielle, also a single mum, offered to carpool. I didn't have everything, but I had enough. One night after a long day, Camilla asked me something that caught me off guard. "Aunt Julia, are you our mom now?" I froze for a second, then nodded. "Yeah, I guess I am." She smiled. "Okay." Just like that. It had been 8 weeks since the day at the airport, and everything in my life had changed. My house looked different. Tiny shoes at the door, glitter art taped to the fridge, a stack of bedtime books on the nightstand. My heart felt different too. I didn't choose this storm, but I chose to stay standing in it. Because some families are built from the ashes of the ones that burned you, and those are the ones worth fighting for. A few weeks after the guilty pleas, I got a call from the US Attorney's Office. "We're recommending full sentencing." Julia said the lead prosecutor, a woman named Morrison, especially in light of the education fund fraud and abandonment evidence. "The jury won't need much convincing." "What are we looking at?" I asked. "For Rachel, 20 years. For Aaron, 7 to 15, depending on cooperation." I said thank you. Then I hung up and stared out my window for a long time. Outside the neighbourhood, kids were drawing chalk rainbows on the sidewalk. Chloe and Camilla were laughing, chasing each other in circles. Their giggles were light, unburdened for the first time in a while. Maybe justice wasn't about feeling good. Maybe it was just about finally feeling safe. The day of the sentencing, the courthouse was packed. Local reporters with cameras, parents from the girls' school, even members of the church women's group showed up. Everyone wanted to see how it would end. Rachel stood before the judge in her orange jumpsuit, her face pale and drawn. Her usual poise was gone. She looked like someone who'd finally run out of lies. "I abandoned my daughters," she said. "I chose image over love. I wanted a life that wasn't real, and I broke the lives of people who were." Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. She knew tears weren't going to fix what she'd done. The judge didn't hold back. "You abandoned your children for a beach vacation and a fantasy. You misused community funds, forged family signatures, and stole your daughter's future. You betrayed not only them, but everyone who trusted you." 20 years, no parole for at least 15. Aaron got 9. His cooperation only went so far. That evening, I walked the girls home through Boston Common. It was October now. The leaves were gold and red, scattered across the sidewalks like something sacred. Aunt Julia, Camilla asked, "We're always going to be together, right?" I squeezed their hands and smiled. Yes, always. 2 weeks later, the adoption was finalised. I became their legal guardian, just paperwork, really. I had already been their safe place, but now it was official. We painted the spare bedroom yellow and filled it with books and blankets. 2 twin beds side by side. Posters of dolphins, dinosaurs, and rainbows. A soft rug where they liked to read at night. "This is your room now," I told them, "for as long as you want it." They cried the first night, but not out of sadness, out of something like relief. My mum changed too. Carol wasn't the same woman who used to be more worried about appearances than truth. Something in her cracked open. Maybe it was watching her oldest daughter fall apart, or realizing how close she came to losing her grandkids. Either way, she started showing up, really showing up. She made cookies on Sundays, came to every school recital, held Chloe's hand during flu shots. She never asked to be forgiven. She just started being present, and in the end, that meant more. Life didn't go back to how it was before. It became something entirely new. Work shifted. I took a role that allowed me to work mostly from home. The firm supported me. Turns out people understand more than you expect if you're honest with them. The neighbourhood wrapped around us. Danielle, my neighbour, picked the girls up on days I had meetings. The church women dropped off meals. Camilla and Chloe made friends, joined dance class. Chloe started calling me Mom without even thinking about it. I didn't correct her. One night I found a stack of essays from their first grade class. The theme was my family. Camilla's started like this. My mum is strong. She makes really good mac and cheese and lets us sleep in her bed when we're scared. Chloe's was even simpler. My mum is Julia. She found us. I cried reading that one. Not because it hurt, but because it healed something I didn't know was broken. Rachel writes letters from prison now and then. They go into a box in my closet. I'll give them to the girls someday when they're ready, when they ask. I don't know if they'll ever want to read them. I won't force it. They deserve to choose what to carry. Aaron sends birthday cards, neutral ones. Just happy birthday, Camilla, in his shaky handwriting. Chloe doesn't say much when they come. She just shrugs and goes back to colouring. That's her answer, I think. Christmas came and the three of us decorated a real tree pine needles everywhere glitter glued to ornaments cookie crumbs ground into the carpet. We sang off-key carols and watched old movies under mismatched blankets. Before bed, Chloe whispered, "I love you, Mom." Camilla added, "We're safe now, right?" I tucked them in, kissed their foreheads, and turned out the light. "We're safe," I said. "We're home." I never wanted to be a parent, not like this, not by being the backup plan after someone else ran. But this isn't the end of their story. It's the beginning, and it's ours now.